just that feeling of, I guess, yeah, instant reward and knowing that you've just made that person's night. Like, again, like I said, very cliche, but that's why we do it. You know, we want to show people a good time.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. One of the beautiful elements of the evolution of Australia's culinary landscape is the blurring of the lines between restaurant and bar. And few have managed to nail that balance from a food perspective better than Josh Lundy in the nation's capital, Canberra. Josh, how you going?
Good, thanks, mate. How you doing?
Good. It's good to get you on the show. You guys are doing incredible things there at Bar Rochford in Canberra. How are things?
Things are going really good, mate. Obviously, you know, the last few years have been, I think, for everyone involved in the hospitality industry, pretty testing. But fingers crossed, we've made it out completely on the other side, and things are really good, mate. And I think, I think the food scene's kind of the best it's kind of been in a while, to be honest with you. And yeah, it's some exciting times ahead. So yeah, things are good.
You guys have a really fascinating venue. It's considered one of the best bars in the country, but it's also realistically quite an amazing restaurant as well. But I don't think you guys really pitch yourself as either. Tell us about the ethos of Bar Rochford.
That's an excellent question. And the place still baffles everyone that works there because, to be honest with you, I've never really seen a venue quite like it. Like, obviously, we do take the restaurant service very seriously. And then, you know, come a Friday, Saturday night, the lights go a bit dimmer and a DJ comes in, and then it turns into this weird, raucous kind of wine bar / there are people dancing, but some people trying to finish their dinner. And yeah, it's a very, very bizarre place. I guess, in short, the ethos, though, is we just want to create a place that people feel comfortable and have an awesome time, whether you want to have, you know, a glass of wine and a few snacks, or you want to sit down for a set menu and have a proper dinner. We kind of just want it to be approachable for everyone and every situation, I guess, would be, in short, what we're aiming for.
You've probably got one of the smallest kitchens that I've ever seen. And so, you know, you create some pretty amazing magic out of that tiny space. How do you approach the food with a venue like that has this huge bar in the middle and as you say, is that sort of bar, but you also can do a set menu as well. What's your approach?
Look, to be honest, you have to be smart with what works. There are some dishes that just wouldn't work, too intense, you know, service-wise or something. I guess it just comes down to a lot of menu planning, you know, like looking at what proteins we can cook at a high standard and lots of, but with limited space, stuff like that. So, you know, obviously over time we've added modifications to the kitchen and stuff. We got a brand new combi oven last year, which was amazing. I don't know how we did what we did before then, to be honest with you. But yeah, I guess in short, just a lot of menu planning and figuring out what will work. And there's a lot of trial and error, you know. There's been a few dishes I've put on over time where it was like it's on for 4 services or a week or something, and you're like, that is just not functional for us. So whether that be like, you know, dial it back a bit or, you know, a bit more work into prep time. Prep time would be another thing that I would say, you know, we really have to be smart and get as much done then as we can in order for it to be functional in the space we have. So, yeah, it's a tricky little space, but we make it work, and I do love it, you know. And being a small kitchen, like, you really do have to be smart with how you use the space. I find there's no room for clutter or messiness, you know, like every single square centimetre of that place gets utilised, which I think is a good thing, you know. So makes you think outside the box a little bit, if you will, like how we can, you know, mould into the space and make it work.
Well, it sort of sums up the venue a little bit. You guys are really sort of breaking new ground and sort of helping carve a new path for Australian food and what it means to dine out. But did the pandemic change that a little bit? Like, if you think of Bar Rochford before all of this chaos of the last sort of 3 years, is it a different model and is it a different approach for what you do with your food?
Yeah, look, it definitely is, to be honest, Huck. It kind of obviously was unintentional, but you know, after the first lockdown in 2020, when we reopened, obviously we were limited. to 20 people, I think it was, or 25, something like that, with our square meterage. And obviously having less people in means you need a guaranteed way to keep the head spend up. So we started doing set menu only, and then once restrictions eased, we kind of kept that to set menu only for bookings of 4 and above. And then, it actually, from a weird way, from the kitchen perspective anyway, it actually helped us become more restauranty, and that way we were able to put a bit more of a focus on the food and the service, and buy a nice combi oven and stuff like that down, like further on down the track. And so yeah, it definitely shaped us massively. Obviously at the time very stressful, but like I said, on the other side of it, it's now a fully functioning restaurant, and we can do 80, 90 packs on a Friday night for set menu, and then but it can also be your weird quirky wine bar. So yeah, it definitely shaped us, definitely.
Well, as you know, I've helped hold up the bar a few times at Bar Rochford, and one of the things that I really enjoy is the dedication to quality produce, but real restraint on the plate as well, which is a key hallmark of your food. Tell us a little bit about sort of what you do with pork on the menu there, and some of the different sort of things that you do to get it on different dishes.
For me, pork is one of my favorite ingredients, because it's so versatile. So when you say pork, that is a massive umbrella of things. Salami, blado, different kind of sausages. We can make a pork terrine. You could do awesome pork chops, your braised pork pasta. So it's such a big window, and there's so many different things to do. So from a wine bar perspective, we've had stuff like, one of the first snacks I put on, I think it would have been 2019, just after Louis left and I came on board, and it's still one of my favorite snacks we've put on there, is just plum and lardo on toast. Very, very simple wine bar snack. Charred bread, yummy plum jam using plums from Golian Farm here in Canberra, and then just some lardo over top, blowtorched, really simple, salty, sweet, a bit of pepperberry on top. So that lends to the wine bar aspect. But then more recently, turning into a bit more of a restaurant, we've had stuff like, like milk braised pork ragu, pork shoulders, braised milk, lots of herbs, lots of veggies, chicken stock, braise it all day, shred it the next day, and house rolled pappardelle. One of my favorite ones is, we have a little hibachi grill. So obviously, most proteins where we can, we like to at least spend a bit of time on there and get some lovely pork from the guys at Haverick. They use Byron Bay Berkshire pork. So we get, we're just getting the chops, pork chops, bone in, brine them, rub them in koji, and then they see the grill. The koji obviously helps, get that umami and that little bit of caramelization. And with a protein like that, you don't need much. We were just serving it with a sweet potato samjang sauce. So, sweet potato puree seasoned with Korean samjang. For those who don't know, my best explanation of it is kind of like miso crossed with barbecue sauce, and then a gochujang, Korean chili caramel glaze over top. Just simple, but it seems simple on the plate, but when I describe it like that, there's actually quite a few things going on. But yeah, so we love to use it because of its versatility. Yeah.
Well, I want to explore sort of what you're doing there a little bit further on, but take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family?
In my family, to be honest, we were never a massive foodie family. Mum was a good cook, but she was very busy. She had a few things that she cooked. She cooked well, but it was just rotation of 5 things. I actually think my first interest came from food at an early age from my older sister, Beck. We used to cook quite a bit together. I would go over to her house, we'd cook curries and stuff. I remember making, when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, for Father's Day one year, we cooked my dad bread and breakfast in bed and filmed the whole thing, and we had stupid like Ainsley Harriott, Jamie Oliver voices on, and filmed it on a crappy old, home camcorder, and like, so I think in hindsight, like, I did have an interest in food and cooking at an early age. I just didn't really realize it until I started working in kitchens, to be honest with you. So yeah.
What ignited that interest to work in kitchens? Like, how did you sort of make that step to decide, okay, I'm going to be a chef?
So, to be completely honest with you, I fell into cooking. So I was, what's the age you can work legally? 14 and 9 months or 14 and 6 months, something like that. I got to that point and mum was like, you need to get a job, make your own money. So I was applying for places like, clothing stores like Jetty Surf at the mall or something, because that was where you got the coolest studded leather belts at the time and weird beanie hats that, thank God, went out of fashion, stuff like that. But my brother, he was mates with a bloke named Andrew Hollands, who owned a restaurant here in Canberra called Ella Cure in Bruce, no longer here anymore. But I remember it was one night he was at a 21st with the chef Andrew Hollands, came home blind drunk and storms into my room, and he just like wakes me up. He's like, Lundy, I got you a job. You start on Tuesday. I went, fuck, all right, no worries. And so the next Tuesday I went in and did a trial at Elicure, and yeah, loved it instantly, to be honest with you. So, and there was a bit of a snowball effect. So obviously started just washing dishes a couple of days a week after school when I was 14. Luckily my school was close by. And then that kind of snowballed, year 9 summer holidays. I'd be doing 5 split shifts a week and helping out in the pizza section. And I can actually feel pretty lucky. I can actually pinpoint the moment that I was like, oh fuck, I'm going to take this seriously. Like, I really like this. It was like middle of summer, very busy lunch function going on at Elicure. And I was on the pizza section. I think someone called in sick and just got thrown on the deep end. Would have been, 15 at the time. And just busting out heaps of pizzas and helping the chefs and stuff. And the head chef just goes to me, he's like, hey mate, you're pretty good at this. You should consider doing this. And I was like, oh, fuck, I actually love it. Like, work's awesome. So yeah, and then from there, I guess, as they say, the rest is history. Just kind of went from there, So
what have been the really important venues that you've worked at and people that you've worked with sort of as you built your career?
So obviously Elicure for that initial, I guess, spark, to be honest. That was pretty special. From there, I then went to 86, and I was part of the opening team of 86, which was, that was pretty amazing. I'd probably say that would be the biggest one that shaped my career. Like, I think 86 was one of, if not the first, modern style restaurants in the format we see today in Canberra. I think 2013, April, we opened, and it was just crazy. It was absolutely nuts. And, big open kitchen, loud music, waiters with attitude, whether people like that or hate that. And I understand why they wouldn't. At the time, it was pretty full on, but it was just so different. And it was just like, but like, it was absolutely crazy. I remember people lining up at the door, people eating black chickens out on the garden lawn out in front of 86 because we didn't have enough tables, but we still wanted to get covers in. Like, it was just, it was mental. It was a very special time. It was tiring, and there were nights where, you just have to stay back and prep till 3 a.m. kind of thing. But it was, it was pretty awesome being a part of that. So finished my apprenticeship there, and then I moved up to Sydney, spent a year in Sydney, and I was lucky enough to score a job at Sepia, which is no longer there, which was also very, that's a career-defining place. It was amazing. I loved working at Sepia. The people were awesome. The food was obviously amazing, and learnt a lot. I didn't love living in Sydney, hence the move back to Canberra. But to be honest, I think a lot of people growing up in Canberra, you kind of have this resentment for the place, that big country town feel. And so you grow up going, fuck, Canberra shit, so boring. And then I moved away and actually got a bit of perspective. And, seeing cool restaurants like that, 86 and opening up and stuff. And then, your Akibas and all that kind of stuff opening up. And, you're like when I was away in Sydney, I realised, fuck, Canberra is actually pretty cool. It's starting to get pretty awesome. So made the move back home, and yeah, so.
Before we explore that move back home, let's just go back to sepia for a little while. It had such a huge influence on Australia's culinary history. Do you have any stories of what it was like working with Martin Ben?
Off the top of my head, no exact stories come to mind. To be honest, it was a big blur, to be honest, the year that I spent there. It was very intense, but it was, yeah, just the level of food just that we were producing. It was just crazy. And just like the beautiful produce that would come in, it was absolutely nuts.
Let's talk about Canberra. It's been evolving incredibly over the last sort of decade, and you've been a big part of that. What do you think about Canberra at the moment and where it's at?
I think the food scene here is the best it's ever been, and it's only getting better, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's a pretty special place in the sense that I think it's just such a good sense of community. Everyone that owns and operates and works in all the like nice restaurants around town, everyone just gets around each other, and that's something that I find so special. You know what I mean? Like, some of my best mates, Dash, Ross, and Mal, who pilot and such, and like, I go to the gym with Ross every morning when he comes. That is, I hope he hears that. But yeah, it's just pretty special to be a part of, to be honest, and seeing it from that growth from the early seedling stages from '86 to where it's at now. It's just come leaps and bounds. You've got your Rebel, the XO guys, love what they do. Miss Vans, there's so many cool venues, just to name a few. Louis at Onziem, like it's just, and everyone just knows each other and gets along with each other and really supports each other. It's pretty special, to be honest. I don't think many other cities have that sense of community that we have here, to be honest.
It's fascinating to watch as from the outside, that sort of connection that the industry seems to have in Canberra. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that everyone sort of seems to all be on the same sort of train moving forward?
I think it comes from it still like feeling like a big country town, even though our population doesn't really reflect that anymore. I think that that's where it comes from, to be honest with you. It's that big country town mentality, and everyone kind of, you see something open, and even if you don't know the people who are behind it, you go in, you're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to get to know that person. You want to have a beer sometime, mate? Like, yeah, it's just happened very organically, and it's pretty special, mate.
Tell us about that time coming back to Canberra. What was that like, and what did you do?
So I went back to '86. I think because it was what I knew, and I was, in a same thing as before. Bit of retrospect, I was actually like, this place is awesome. This is doing really cool things, not only for Canberra, but for the nation. I remember Caramel Popcorn Sundae at '86 was on the cover of Gourmet Traveller, and everyone was like, what the fuck did we just do? What? Like, that was crazy. Like, a restaurant from Canberra being on the cover of Gourmet Traveller? No way. So, yeah, perspective. Had a bit of perspective. I was like, this is a very cool restaurant. Went back there, spent a bit of time there. Made my way up to sous chef, and then from there went to Gus, the owner of '86, bought Pulp Kitchen in Ainsley off Nathan and Dan, and so we did a bit of a refurb and refit out and put a new kitchen in and whatnot, and then went over across to there. That was my first head chef role, so that was pretty exciting.
Tell us about that. What was it difficult, or what were the challenges of moving into your first head chef role?
Look, like, just I guess the extra level of responsibility. Luckily, coming from sous chef to head chef, it wasn't a crazy big jump, and we knew that this was going to happen for a little while. So, I was, like really trying to be actively heavily involved in the ordering and rostering and all that kind of stuff at '86. So it kind of primed me ready for that aspect of it. But I guess the biggest challenge is just like, at the end of the day, is like, first head chef role. Fuck, will people actually like the food? you know, like that's the biggest thing. Like you spent so long, costing menus, testing dishes, rostering, all that kind of stuff, like, figuring out the best way to go about things. But the biggest, most daunting thing for me was, opening night. And you're like, okay, I know from my end everything's okay, but what the fuck are people actually going to think of the food? That in itself is pretty daunting, to be honest with you. So yeah, that was my biggest challenge, I reckon. And yeah.
How did the gig with Bar Rochford come about?
So Nick and I had known each other for quite some time. Nick's partner Lucy actually used to work front of house at 86 with us, and I remember meeting Nick, I think it was back in 2015. I always love telling this story. I think it was after a Christine Manfield pop-up event at 86. And we all went out after service. Lucy, Nick's partner, was there, and a bunch of us from 86. Dash was there as well. We all went out, had an awesome night in the town. Bar closed. We decided we want to have a few more drinks, and Lucy's like, oh, let's go back to my apartment in Braddon. So I think there's like 7 or 8 of us, spend all night out, like pretty blind, get back to the house, and probably about 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning at this point, created a rabble, and we woke Nick up. And instead of telling us to bugger off, this dude just starts throwing down some vinyl records in his house in his pajamas and DJing for kick-ons. And I was like, fuck this, who is this man? That's pretty special. So that's my first interaction with Nick. And then I guess we just had a really good relationship. Then that comes from what I was saying earlier about the community in Canberra. Like everyone was talking about Bar Rochford opening up, and, went to the soft launch and stuff like that and got there as much as I could. And then flash forward a few years, just finished up after Gus sold Pulp, went back to 86 for a little bit, finished up there. And then I was working casually. I was working actually on the floor at Morks, spending a bit of time in front of house, and working in the kitchen at Teddy Pickers in Campbell, just after, working quite intensely full time for a little while, just step back and work casually for a little bit. And Nick approached me to do a pop-up initially. I think it was Frederick Stevenson, the winemaker from the Barossa, to do a pop-up. He was coming down doing a wine dinner and asked if I wanted to cook for it. And of course I said yes. I'd always wanted to do stuff at Bar Rochford. And as I said, Nick and I had a great relationship. And then that just kind of snowballed organically. I think after our first meeting about the pop-up, he called me 2 weeks later. He's like, can we have another chat? And he said that Louis was going to move on. He'd done his time there and asked if I'd be interested in potentially taking on the role. And of course, my initial answer was straight away, yes. Like you're such a cool dude. Love the venue, and I've always wanted to work there. So yeah, the rest is history.
Well, for a couple of years, you were a co-head chef with Belinda Florence. So what was that like?
Oh, look, mate, it was awesome, to be honest with you. It was, I think we're both quite different style-wise, and like we were able to play off each other a little bit. Not a little bit, sorry, quite a lot. Belle comes from a lot more technique-driven, fine dining kind of background, and, I'm very used to cooking, like, the share food kind of stuff. I get not home style, but, like just a bit more classic or rustic, I guess, if you will, but with modern touches. And I guess, yeah, we just worked really well together off that, man. Yeah, it was really, really cool. We'd sit there and brainstorm different ideas, and both had such a different way of going about it, but it worked. So yeah, it was really nice. Someone to share the load with.
Let's talk about your food and your approach. You just sort of touched on it a little bit then, but how do you sort of create dishes, and how would you describe your food? Is there maybe 1 or 2 dishes, maybe with pork in it, that you can talk about that sort of exemplifies your cooking?
Yeah, well, I guess first and foremost, mate, like the key is to let the produce speak for itself. That's kind of what we aim to do day in, day out at Rochford. So going back on the dish I said earlier, one of my favourite pork dishes we've done is the Berkshire pork chop. Brine it 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, depending on the thickness. Wash it off, pat it dry, rub it in koji, so like a fermented Japanese rice paste, and that just helps break it down a little bit, tenderize it, season it, and then also you just get this awesome umami flavor coming off it on the grill. And then gochujang caramel, sweet potato samjang, very very simple. As well, I've found coming from Elicure was kind of like a modern Australian / Italian. I've always had this affinity to go back to pasta, which obviously, from a pork perspective, again, the possibilities are endless. You've got carbonaras with guanciale, you've got, awesome braised red sauces with lots of chorizo through it, stuff like that. Or, as mentioned earlier, milk braised pork ragu with pappardelle. So that's also played. And I didn't realize it until a few years ago that I was like, why? And even on my days off, pasta. That's what I want to cook is pasta. And I was like, why is that? And then that was the first place I worked, pizzas and pastas and yummy share food like that. And I've just always find myself going back to that as the stuff I want to cook.
Is there any sort of particular cuts of the pig that you prefer to work with? And do you have a secret tip on the best way to cook it?
If you have access to sous vide, pork neck or butt, I find is really, really awesome. Obviously, you don't have to sous vide. You could braise it, but we found over time that that's the most consistent way to cook it. Again, brine it. All the larger cuts that we serve of pork, we tend to brine it, and I just find brining adds flavour, also tenderizes it, and you get a better cook. But then, if you have access to a sous vide, I would recommend pork neck, brining, sous vide it for about 12 hours at 60 degrees, chill it down, and then you could do so much with it. You could slice it thin, serve it on a sandwich if you wanted to. You could have it as steaks. You could shred it if you wanted to. Like quite a versatile cut.
Obviously, being the crackling, we'd love to get sort of tips on the best way to produce the best crackling. Do you have a go-to technique that you use that you could share?
Yeah, so I remember back at 86, we used to do these. It was like a do-it-yourself SARM kind of situation. And again, at the time, we were like, fuck, no one does this. This is so cool. This is so different. I think we got a lot of inspiration from people like Dan Hong and Mamafuku and stuff like that. But I remember the pork belly we used to do there, score your skin. And then we used to fill a gastro pan, put it on the stove top, get the water boiling, and just dip the skin in there once or twice, and then let it sit overnight in the cool room, get it completely dry. Next day, go to cook it. Lots of salt, lots of veg oil, nice neutral oil so it doesn't burn. Hot oven till it starts to crackle, and then lower the temp, finish it, braise it off.
Bar Rochford, considered one of the best bars in the country and certainly one of the leaders of the new wave in Canberra. What can we expect in the next sort of year from you guys?
That's a great question, mate. I think this year we want to focus on, getting back to normal. We really want to do some different events with different cool places around the country that we really like to do. Fingers crossed we could do something out in Braidwood at some point soon in the next couple of months. Tristan, the head chef of Mona, I worked with him in Sydney at Sepia, and he's a friend. And Nick, one of the other owners, actually lives out at Braidwood now, so it kind of makes sense to do something there. But that's our big goal for the year, is just to try and do different cool events, get cool winemakers in or cool chefs, and just really get back to pre-COVID times. Because even last year we had a few events planned for early in the year, but then there was another wave of COVID, and so we just want to get back to normal and just throw weird raucous wine parties that we love and that the place has been come to known for.
Well, great food and great drinks aside, which is what you guys deliver. You guys are just really nail fun and a fun night out, and have made a huge impact on Canberra. What do you love about what you do?
It's quite cliche, but to be honest, I find it just so instantly rewarding, and there's nothing quite like the feeling like you're having a shit day at work, and you're in the weeds for prep or whatnot, and then you get to service and you cook a plate of food, and someone you've never seen before in your life comes up and said, "Mate, I just want to say thank you for the food. That's awesome." Like, yeah, for me, that's like the pinnacle of it. I guess is just. I don't know. That's something that's always appealed to me about hospitality is like not control, but the way you can dictate the person sitting there's time that they spend in that place. It's just a special thing, and there's no other feeling quite like it. It's hard to explain, especially people that don't work in hospitality, but just that feeling of, I guess, instant reward and knowing that you've just made that person's night. Like, again, like I said, very cliche, but that's why we do it. We want to show people a good time.
Well, you're very good at it, Josh, and you're very good at it, and it's an honour to have you on the Crackling today to hear just a bit of your story. Look forward to hearing what you do this year, especially the big event out at Braidwood. That'll be amazing. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honour.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.